Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now let's start. The year was 1878, and Nebraska was still finding its footing in a young America. Nathan Kelley had come to the small frontier town of Pine Ridge 3 years prior, seeking a fresh start after the war had hollowed him out. At 32, his sandy brown hair was already threaded with silver at the temples, his blue eyes carrying the weight of things no man should have to see. He'd built a modest homestead 2 miles outside of town, close enough for supplies, far enough to avoid the stairs. Nathan kept to himself, tending his small farm and doing carpentry work when money ran thin. The townsfolk regarded him with a mixture of respect and wariness. He was polite but private, and in a place where everyone knew everyone's business, his reluctance to share his past made him an outsider. On a crisp autumn morning, Nathan rode into town for supplies. As he approached the general store, he noticed a crowd gathered around the auction block, a crude wooden platform where livestock and occasionally property were sold to the highest bidder. He'd have ignored it, as he usually did, if not for the unusual silence that hung over the crowd. "What's Pearson up to now?" he muttered to himself, securing his horse and making his way toward the gathering. The crowd parted slightly as he approached, and that's when he saw her. A young Chinese woman stood on the platform, her hands bound with coarse rope. She wore a simple blue cotton dress, frayed at the edges. Her dark eyes were downcast, her long black hair falling in a thick braid over one shoulder. She couldn't have been older than 20. "Folks, as I was saying, Harold Pearson, the self-appointed auctioneer and town's most notorious businessman, continued. This Oriental girl was found with a group of railroad workers moving west. No papers, no English. The railroad foreman sold her to me for transport costs. She's strong, can cook and clean by all accounts." Nathan felt his stomach turn. The war might have ended, but the buying and selling of human beings hadn't disappeared. It had just changed form. "Starting bid is $10, Pearson announced. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few men in the back snickered. One called out, "What would I want with a Chinese girl? Can't even speak proper English." Nathan watched as the young woman flinched at the laughter, but kept her eyes fixed on the ground. There was dignity in her posture despite her circumstances, a quiet resilience that struck him. $8 then. Pearson adjusted, growing impatient. "No takers." "Fine. $7. That's less than a good hunting dog, gentlemen." The crowd remained silent, and something in Nathan snapped. $7, he called out, his voice carrying across the square. Heads turned, surprised to hear the reclusive carpenter speak up. Pearson's eyebrows shot up. "Well now, looks like Mr. Kelley has an interest after all. $7 going once." Nathan could feel the stares boring into him. Sheriff Wilson, who had been watching the proceedings with obvious discomfort, caught Nathan's eye with a questioning look. $7 going twice. "Sold. To Nathan Kelley for $7. Nathan stepped forward, pulling the money from his pocket. As he handed it to Pearson, the man leaned in with a smirk. "Didn't figure you for the type, Kelley." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Just give me the rope," he said quietly. He approached the platform where the young woman still stood, her shoulders tense. When he reached for her bound hands, she finally looked up at him. The fear in her eyes nearly stopped him cold. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, though he knew she probably couldn't understand. He untied the rope from her wrists, careful not to touch her skin. Once her hands were free, Nathan gestured toward his wagon. "Come on," he said, then turned and walked away, hoping she would follow. After a moment's hesitation, she did. The whispers started immediately. "What's he want with a Chinese girl?" Always knew there was something off about that, Kelley. Quiet ones always the strangest, mark my words. Nathan ignored them, helping the young woman into his wagon before climbing up himself. As they rode out of town, he could feel the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on his back. The ride to Nathan's homestead was silent. The young woman sat stiffly beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed straight ahead. Nathan struggled to find words that might comfort her, but what could he possibly say? He'd bought her. The very thought made him ill. His home came into view, a modest 2-room cabin with a small barn behind it. A vegetable garden ran along one side, and a chicken coop stood near the back. It wasn't much, but it was neat and well-maintained. He stopped the wagon and turned to her. "My name is Nathan," he said slowly, pointing to himself. Nathan. She looked at him cautiously before nodding. Ning, she replied softly, placing a hand on her chest. Ning, he repeated. I'm sorry about all of this. I don't know if you understand me, but I'm not going to harm you. I just couldn't leave you there. Confusion flickered across her face, but she gave a small nod. Nathan helped her down from the wagon and showed her into the cabin. It was simple inside. A main room with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 2 chairs, a small kitchen area, and a door leading to his bedroom. You can have the bedroom, he said, gesturing to the door. I'll sleep out here. Ning stood uncertainly in the middle of the room, taking in her surroundings. Nathan realized how frightening this must be for her, alone in a strange country with a strange man who had just purchased her like livestock. Are you hungry? He asked, miming eating. She hesitated, then nodded. Nathan set about making a simple meal of beans and cornbread. As he worked, he noticed Ning watching him intently, as if memorizing his movements. When he finished, he set 2 plates on the table and motioned for her to join him. They ate in silence, but Nathan caught her studying him when she thought he wasn't looking. Her eyes, he noticed, were not just dark, but deep, like they held stories he couldn't begin to imagine. After dinner, Nathan showed her to the bedroom and tried his best to communicate that it was hers now. He gathered some blankets for himself and made a pallet near the fireplace. As he lay down that night, staring at the ceiling, he wondered what in heaven's name he'd gotten himself into. Morning came with a pounding on his door that jolted Nathan awake. He got to his feet quickly, glancing toward the bedroom door, still closed. The pounding came again, more insistent. Nathan opened the door to find Sheriff Wilson standing there, his expression grim. Behind him, a group of about 15 townspeople had gathered in Nathan's yard. Morning, Nathan, the sheriff said, his voice tight. We need to talk about your purchase yesterday. Nathan stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind him. What about it? There's been talk, Wilson said, lowering his voice. People are concerned about what you're doing with that Chinese girl. I'm not doing anything with her, Nathan replied coldly. That's so, a voice called from the crowd. It was Thomas Reed, the blacksmith, a large man with an even larger opinion of himself. Then why'd you buy her? $7 for a person ain't natural. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. I bought her so none of you would, Nathan said evenly. She's a human being, not property. Then what are your intentions? Asked Reverend Parker, stepping forward. This arrangement is highly improper, Mr. Kelley. A single man housing an unmarried woman, a foreigner at that. My intentions are to help her, Nathan said. To give her a safe place until she can decide what she wants to do. The Chinese are taking American jobs, someone called out. Railroads full of working for pennies while good men can't feed their families. She's one person, Nathan countered, and she's done nothing to any of you. The bedroom door opened behind him, and Nathan turned to see Ning standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with alarm at the crowd outside. The sight of her seemed to inflame some in the group. See there? Reed pointed accusingly. Dressed like she owns the place already. Ning was wearing the same blue dress from yesterday, looking anything but comfortable. She needs to go back where she came from, another voice shouted. Sheriff Wilson raised his hands. Now, folks, let's keep calm. Nathan, you have to understand how this looks. This town has standards to uphold. Standards? Nathan laughed bitterly. Was selling her on an auction block upholding your standards, Sheriff? Wilson had the decency to look uncomfortable. That was Pearson's doing, not town business. Yet you stood by and watched, Nathan pointed out. Just like you all did. I didn't see any of you objecting then. The crowd shifted uneasily. The fact remains, Reverend Parker persisted. This arrangement is unsuitable. If you truly wish to help this woman, Nathan, there are proper channels. The mission in Omaha takes in foreigners, helps them return to their homelands or find suitable work with proper families. She stays here until she chooses otherwise, Nathan said firmly. Now, unless you're planning to force your way into my home, I suggest you all go back to town. A tense silence followed. Then Thomas Reed stepped forward menacingly. You always were strange, Kelley. Keeping to yourself, turning down good Christian women when they invite you to supper. Now we know why. Got a taste for the exotic, do you? Nathan's hands clenched into fists. Step back, Reed. Or what? Reed challenged, moving closer. What will you do, Kelley? We outnumber you. That's enough, Sheriff Wilson intervened, placing a hand on Reed's chest. "This isn't how we handle things in Pine Ridge." "You have until sundown tomorrow," Reed declared, ignoring the sheriff. "Get that Chinese girl out of town, or we'll do it for you." With that, he turned and stalked away. Several others followed, throwing dark looks over their shoulders. A few lingered, looking uncertain. "I can't promise I can control them if they come back, Nathan," the sheriff said quietly. "Think about what you're doing here." After the sheriff and the remaining townspeople left, Nathan closed the door and turned to face Ning, who stood watching him with worried eyes. "I'm sorry about that," he said, knowing she couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone conveyed his meaning. To his surprise, she spoke. "They want me to go?" Her English was halting, but clear enough. Nathan stared at her. "You speak English?" "Little," she replied, holding her thumb and forefinger close together. "Learn on railroad." "Listen much." Nathan felt a surge of relief at being able to communicate with her, however basically. "Yes, they want you to leave. But you don't have to go anywhere you don't want to." Ning's brow furrowed as she processed his words. "Why you by me?" The question hit Nathan like a physical blow. How could he explain his impulsive act without sounding either like a savior or someone with ulterior motives? The truth was, he wasn't entirely sure himself why he'd done it. "I couldn't watch them sell a person," he said finally. It wasn't right. She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to read the truth in his face. "You are a good man." "I try to be," he answered honestly. Ning nodded slowly. "I cook for you." "To thank." Before Nathan could protest, she had moved to the kitchen area and was examining what supplies he had. He watched as she confidently assessed his modest pantry, realizing that perhaps letting her take control of something, even something as simple as making breakfast, might help her feel less powerless. As she worked, Nathan sat at the table and explained the situation as simply as he could. "The town is afraid of what they don't understand. They've never met someone from China before." "I understand fear," Ning replied without looking up from the pan where she was cooking rice with bits of dried meat and egg. "In China, my village fears soldiers. Here, people fear Chinese." "Why did you leave China?" Nathan asked carefully. Ning was quiet for so long that he thought she hadn't understood or didn't want to answer. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "My father owe money. Many money. Man say I work for railroad company in America, send money home. Pay father's debt." She stirred the food methodically. "When I come here, no send money. Keep me like property. Make me cook, clean for many men." "I'm sorry," Nathan said, the inadequacy of his words weighing heavily. Ning shrugged slightly. "Life is hard. In China, in America." She turned and set a plate in front of him. "But today we eat." The food was simple but flavorful, unlike anything Nathan had tasted before. They ate in a silence that felt somewhat more comfortable than the previous days. After breakfast, Nathan knew he needed to prepare for the possibility that Reed and the others would make good on their threat. He spent the morning reinforcing the cabin's windows and doors, checking his rifle, and moving his horse from the barn to a corral closer to the house. Ning watched him work for a while before approaching. "They come back? Fight." Nathan paused in his hammering. "They might. I hope not." "Because of me," she said, her expression troubled. "No," Nathan corrected firmly. "Because of them. Their fear, their ignorance." Ning seemed unconvinced. "I can go. Find other Chinese. California maybe. Is that what you want?" She looked away. "What I want not matter before. Why matter now?" "It matters to me," Nathan said. "This is your choice, Ning. Not mine, not theirs." She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw something other than fear or caution in her eyes. A flicker of hope, perhaps. "I think about it," she said finally. As the day progressed, Nathan tried to make Ning feel more at ease. He showed her around the property, explained his simple farming operation, and introduced her to the chickens, which seemed to delight her. In turn, she shared small details about her life in China, her village near the sea, her mother who taught her to cook, her 3 younger brothers whom she missed desperately. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered, promising a storm. Nathan was checking the roof for leaks when he spotted a rider approaching. His hand instinctively moved to the knife at his belt before he recognized Sarah Wilson, the sheriff's daughter. Sarah rode up to the cabin, her expression anxious. She was a sensible young woman of 25 who taught at the town's small school. Nathan had always respected her independent mind, so different from many in Pine Ridge. Nathan, she called, dismounting quickly. I had to warn you. Reed and some others are planning to come tonight. They've been drinking since noon, getting all worked up. Nathan climbed down from the roof. Your father know about this? Sarah nodded grimly. He tried to talk them down, but Reed's got half the men convinced that harboring Chinese is going to bring a whole flood of them to Pine Ridge. It's nonsense, of course, but they're not thinking clearly. Ning had emerged from the cabin and stood uncertainly in the doorway. Sarah noticed her and offered a kind smile. Hello there. I'm Sarah Wilson. To Nathan's surprise, Ning stepped forward and gave a small bow. Ning do thank you for warning. Sarah looked impressed. You speak English. That's wonderful. She turned back to Nathan. Father sent me to offer to take her to our house for the night. He thinks if she's not here when Reed arrives, they'll calm down and go home. Nathan considered this. The sheriff's offer was generous, but something about it bothered him. And tomorrow? Will they calm down then too? Or the next day? Sarah sighed. I know. It's not a solution, but it might buy you time to figure something out. Nathan looked at Ning. It's your decision. You'd be safer at the sheriff's house tonight. Ning's gaze shifted between Nathan and Sarah, then toward the road to town. After a moment, she straightened her shoulders. I stay here. No more running. Sarah looked concerned, but nodded. I understand. I'll tell Father. She mounted her horse again. Be careful, both of you. Reed's got about 8 men with him, all armed. After Sarah left, Nathan and Ning prepared for a long night. The storm broke just after sunset, rain lashing against the windows and thunder rolling across the plains. Nathan positioned himself near the front window, rifle at the ready, while Ning insisted on keeping watch from the bedroom window. You should try to get some sleep, Nathan told her. I'll wake you if anything happens. Ning shook her head firmly. My fight too. Hours passed with only the sound of rain and thunder. Nathan began to hope that the storm had deterred Reed and his men, or that perhaps they'd thought better of their plan. Just as he was considering suggesting they both get some rest, Ning called out from the bedroom. Lights. Coming from town. Nathan moved quickly to her side. Through the rain-streaked window, he could make out the bobbing glow of several lanterns moving steadily along the road toward his property. How many? He asked. Ning counted under her breath. 8. No, 9 lights. Nathan felt his heart sink. More than Sarah had warned about. Stay inside, away from the windows, he instructed. If shooting starts, get down on the floor. He moved back to the front room, positioned himself beside the door, and waited. The approaching lights stopped at the edge of his property. Voices carried through the rain, though Nathan couldn't make out the words. Then the lights began moving again, spreading out as they approached the cabin. Kelley, Reed's voice boomed over the storm. Come out and bring the Chinese with you. Nathan remained silent, watching through a crack in the curtains as the men drew closer. He recognized most of them. Reed, the blacksmith, Pearson, who'd conducted the auction, Frank Miller, who owned the saloon, and several farmhands and shopkeepers. All were armed, some with rifles, others with pistols or shotguns. Last chance, Kelley. Reed called again. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Nathan opened the door just enough to call back. Go home, Reed. There's no trouble here except what you're bringing. A gunshot cracked through the night, the bullet splintering the wood of the doorframe inches from Nathan's head. He slammed the door shut and dropped to the floor. That's your answer. Reed shouted. We're taking the girl one way or another. More shots followed, bullets thudding into the cabin's outer walls. Nathan crawled to Ning, who had taken cover beside the bed. Are you all right? He asked. She nodded, her face pale but determined. What we do now? Nathan had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but Reed had made his intentions clear. I'm going to try to drive them back. If I can get to the barn, I can circle behind them. Too dangerous, Ning objected. Too many men. We don't have much choice, Nathan replied grimly. If they get inside. He was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass as something crashed through the front window. A moment later, smoke began to fill the cabin. A burning torch had been thrown inside. Out the back, Nathan ordered, grabbing his rifle and a small bag of ammunition. They rushed through the bedroom to the rear window. Nathan broke the glass with his rifle, and helped Ning climb through. The rain was still coming down hard, which was their only advantage. The torch inside would take time to catch, and those outside would have limited visibility. Once outside, Nathan led Ning toward the barn, keeping low and using the darkness and rain as cover. They were halfway there when a shout went up. There they are, behind the house. Gunfire erupted again, bullets whistling past them. Nathan pushed Ning ahead. Keep going. Get inside the barn. As she ran, Nathan turned and fired 2 quick shots in the direction of their pursuers, hoping to slow them down rather than hit anyone. He followed Ning into the barn, securing the door behind them. What now? Ning asked, breathless. Nathan's mind raced. The barn wouldn't provide protection for long, and his cabin was likely burning despite the rain. He led Ning to the back of the barn, where he kept his wagon. We need to get away from here, he said, hastily hitching his second horse to the wagon. I know a place we might be safe. Shouts and pounding at the barn door told them they had little time. Nathan helped Ning into the wagon, then climbed up beside her. He guided the horse toward the barn's rear doors, which opened onto a field that led eventually to the creek and the woods beyond. Hold on, he warned, and then snapped the reins hard. The horse surged forward, the wagon wheels skidding in the mud as they burst through the back doors into the pouring rain. Behind them, the barn door splintered as Reed and his men broke through. Nathan kept the horse at a gallop, heading away from the road and toward the creek. The wagon bounced violently over the uneven ground, and Ning gripped the seat with white knuckles. Gunshots rang out behind them, but the rain and darkness made accurate shooting impossible. They reached the creek, normally a gentle stream, but now swollen with rainwater. Nathan had to make a split-second decision: try to cross, or follow the bank toward the bridge half a mile downstream. The shouts behind them made the choice for him. We have to cross, he yelled over the storm. It's not deep, just fast. Ning nodded, her face set with determination. Nathan guided the horse into the rushing water. The animal balked initially, but then plunged forward. The wagon lurched as the current caught it, the wheels sliding on the creek bed. For a terrifying moment, Nathan thought they would be swept away, but the horse found its footing and struggled toward the opposite bank. Just as they reached the middle of the creek, a bullet struck the side of the wagon. Ning cried out, clutching her arm. Are you hit? Nathan shouted, his heart in his throat. No, she gasped. Just scared. The horse finally dragged them up the far bank, and Nathan urged it into the cover of the trees. The darkness of the forest enveloped them, the thick canopy offering some shelter from the rain. Behind them, the shouts faded as Reed and his men reached the swollen creek and, presumably, decided not to attempt a crossing in the dark. Nathan slowed the horse to a walk, navigating carefully through the trees. There's an old trapper's cabin about 2 miles from here, he explained to Ning. My friend Daniel used to live there before he moved west. We'll be safe there for the night at least. Ning sat silently beside him, shivering in her soaked dress. Nathan shrugged out of his coat and draped it around her shoulders. She looked up at him with questioning eyes. Why you help me? She asked softly. Risk everything? Nathan kept his gaze fixed ahead, guiding the horse through the darkness. Because it's right, he said simply. Then, after a pause, and because I know what it's like to be viewed as less than human. He felt her watching him, but didn't elaborate. The memories of the war, of being a prisoner, of the dehumanization he'd experienced, those were things he rarely spoke of. They reached the trapper's cabin just as the storm began to abate. It was a simple one-room structure, dusty and abandoned but intact. Nathan lit the old lantern he found inside and started a fire in the small stone fireplace, while Ning huddled near the growing warmth. We'll rest here tonight, Nathan said, laying out some blankets he'd found in a trunk. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next. Ning wrapped his coat tighter around herself. Your home, it burned? Nathan nodded grimly. Probably. Because of me, she said, her voice heavy with guilt. No, Nathan said firmly, sitting beside her. Because of men who fear what they don't understand. What happened tonight isn't your fault, Ning. She looked into the fire, the flames reflecting in her dark eyes. In my village, there was saying, the nail that stands up gets hammered down. You stand up for me. Now they hammer you. Then we'll both have to stand up taller, Nathan replied. Get some rest. We're safe here for now. As Ning settled onto the blankets, Nathan kept watch by the window, his rifle across his lap. The rain had stopped, and moonlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. In the distance, he could see the glow of what he assumed was his burning cabin. 3 years of work, gone. His home, his livelihood. And for what? for standing against an injustice that the entire town seemed willing to accept. He should feel angry, resentful even, but as he looked at Ning's sleeping form, all he felt was a quiet certainty that he'd done the right thing. Morning came with clear skies and difficult decisions. Nathan had spent much of the night considering their options. They couldn't return to Pine Ridge. Reed and his men would be waiting, and now they could add arson and attempted murder to their grievances. Ning awoke as sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window. She sat up, blinking in the brightness, her long hair falling loose around her shoulders. "How you feel?" she asked, noticing Nathan's tired eyes. "I'm fine," he assured her. "Hungry, though? Let's see if there's anything edible in this place." They found some preserved foods in the cabin's small pantry: jerky, beans, and dried fruit that, while not fresh, were still edible. As they ate their simple breakfast, Nathan outlined his thoughts. "We have two choices as I see it. We can head east to Omaha. It's a bigger city, more Chinese there, and you might find people who could help you. Or we can go west to Wyoming Territory. I have a friend there who might give us work until we figure out something more permanent." Ning considered this. "What you want to do?" Nathan was surprised by the question. "It's not about what I want. You're free to make your own choice now." She shook her head. "You lose everything because of me. Now we decide together." Her straightforward logic touched him. "All right then. I think west is our better option. Omaha might seem safer for you, but there's prejudice there too, just in a different form. In Wyoming, my friend Daniel runs a trading post near a growing settlement. He's a good man, doesn't care where a person comes from as long as they work hard." Ning nodded slowly. "Then we go west." They set out mid-morning, following game trails through the forest until they reached a rarely used logging road that Nathan knew eventually connected with the main road west, well past Pine Ridge. The day was warm for autumn, the sky a clear, endless blue above them. As they traveled, Nathan taught Ning more English words, and she shared phrases in her native Cantonese. They talked about their lives before, Nathan's childhood in Pennsylvania, his time in the army, the war that had changed him. Ning told him about her family's small farm near Guangzhou, her mother's illness that had left her father desperate for money, and her journey across the ocean on a crowded ship where many had fallen ill. By late afternoon, they had reached the main road and turned west. Nathan kept a watchful eye out for anyone from Pine Ridge, but the road was largely deserted save for the occasional farmer's wagon or lone rider. "How far to Wyoming?" Ning asked as the sun began to sink toward the horizon. "About a week's journey," Nathan replied. "We'll need to stop in the next town for supplies. I have a little money saved, enough to get us there at least." They made camp that night in a small grove of trees just off the road. As they sat by their small fire, eating a rabbit Nathan had managed to shoot, Ning studied him with curious eyes. "Why you alone, Nathan? No wife, no family?" The question caught him off guard. "I was engaged once before the war. Her name was Elizabeth." He poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise. "When I came back, I was different. The things I'd seen done." She tried to understand, but in the end, it was too much. Ning nodded thoughtfully. "War changed people. My grandfather was soldier. Come back, quiet man." "Yes," Nathan agreed. "Very quiet." They fell silent for a while, the crackling of the fire the only sound between them. "In my village," Ning said eventually, "people say Americans hate Chinese. Think we not human. But you different." Nathan sighed. "Not all Americans think that way. But fear is powerful, and fear of people who look different, speak different. It's easy for that fear to turn to hatred. You not afraid of different?" He looked at her across the fire, at her delicate features illuminated by the dancing flames. "I've learned that people are just people, no matter where they come from. Some good, some bad, most just trying to get by." Ning smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. "Good answer." The next day brought them to a small town called Fairfield. Nathan was wary of entering any settlement, concerned that word of what had happened in Pine Ridge might have spread. But they needed supplies, and he hoped a town this size would be indifferent to two travelers passing through. "Stay close to me," he instructed Ning as they approached the town's general store. "If anyone asks, you're my housekeeper, and we're traveling to meet my brother in Wyoming." Ning nodded, pulling her shawl closer around her shoulders. The store owner, a balding man with spectacles, barely glanced at them as Nathan purchased flour, coffee, bacon, and other essentials. A few other customers eyed Ning curiously, but said nothing. Nathan was beginning to think they would get through the stop without incident when the door opened, and two men walked in. Nathan recognized one immediately, Frank Miller, the saloon owner from Pine Ridge. Miller stopped short when he saw Nathan, his hand moving instinctively toward his belt. "Well now," Miller said, his voice carrying through the store. "If it ain't Nathan Kelley and his Chinese girl." The store fell silent, all eyes turning to them. Nathan positioned himself slightly in front of Ning. "We're just passing through, Miller. Don't want any trouble." "Funny thing about trouble," Miller replied, stepping closer. "It has a way of following some folks. Reed's mighty upset about his leg. Took a bad fall crossing that creek, chasing after you two." "He shouldn't have been chasing us in the first place," Nathan said evenly. Miller's companion, a wiry man Nathan didn't recognize, circled to their right. "Word is you burned down your own place just to blame honest men standing up for their town." Nathan almost laughed at the absurdity. "Is that what they're saying?" "Telegraph went out to the marshals this morning," Miller continued. "Arson, kidnapping, assaulting good citizens of Pine Ridge. They'll be looking for you, Kelley." The store owner had moved behind his counter, his hand disappearing beneath it, likely reaching for a weapon. The other customers had backed away, creating a clear space around Nathan and Ning. Nathan felt Ning's hand grip the back of his coat. He needed to get them out of there without bloodshed. "Mr. Miller," a new voice interrupted. An older woman stepped forward from the back of the store. She was tall and regal, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. "I do believe you're disturbing my shopping." Miller frowned. "Mrs. Hammond, this doesn't concern you. When men start threatening violence in Ernest's store, it concerns everyone in Fairfield," she replied sharply. "Sheriff Hammond, my son, would be most displeased to hear of it." Miller hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Mrs. Hammond turned to Nathan and Ning. "You two look like you could use a good meal. I was just about to head home for lunch. Perhaps you'd join me?" Nathan recognized the lifeline being thrown to them. "That's very kind of you, ma'am." "Then it's settled," Mrs. Hammond declared, picking up her basket. "Ernest, please have my purchases delivered as usual. Good day, gentlemen." She swept toward the door, and Nathan guided Ning after her, keeping himself between her and the two men from Pine Ridge. Miller made no move to stop them, but his eyes promised that this wasn't over. Once outside, Mrs. Hammond maintained her brisk pace until they were well away from the store and heading toward a large house at the edge of town. "Thank you," Nathan said when they reached her gate. "You took quite a risk back there." Mrs. Hammond waved off his gratitude. "Nonsense. Frank Miller is all bluster. Besides, I recognize the look of people in need of an ally." She opened her gate and ushered them inside. "I'm Abigail Hammond. My late husband founded this town, and my son is the sheriff, though he's away in the county seat until tomorrow." She led them into a comfortable parlor and insisted they sit while she prepared tea. When she returned with a tray laden with tea, bread, and cold meat, she settled across from them with a keen gaze. "Now then, why don't you tell me why two men from Pine Ridge are so interested in you and this young lady?" Nathan glanced at Ning, who nodded slightly, then recounted the events of the past few days: the auction, his impulsive purchase, the town's reaction, and the attack on his home. Mrs. Hammond listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Disgraceful," she pronounced when he finished. "Though not entirely surprising. Pine Ridge has always harbored some unsavory attitudes." She turned her attention to Ning. "And you, my dear? What are your plans now?" Ning looked to Nathan briefly before answering. "We go to Wyoming. Find work, safe place." Mrs. Hammond nodded thoughtfully. "A sensible plan. However, you should know that what Mr. Miller said about the telegraph is likely true. If they've filed false charges against Mr. Kelley, you may find yourselves pursued by marshals." Nathan's heart sank. He hadn't considered that Reed might use legal channels for his vendetta. "What would you suggest, Mrs. Hammond?" he asked. The older woman sipped her tea before responding. "Stay here tonight. My home is large, and I have plenty of room. Tomorrow, when my son returns, we can discuss the matter with him. Jonathan is a fair man and has no love for the troublemakers in Pine Ridge. He may be able to send word to the territorial authorities clarifying the situation." Nathan was reluctant to involve anyone else in their problems, but knew they had few options. "That's very generous of you." "Not at all," Mrs. Hammond replied with a small smile. "I've never been one to stand by when injustice is being done." She set down her cup decisively. "Now, Let me show you to your rooms so you can rest. You look exhausted, both of you. That evening, after bathing and changing into clean clothes provided by Mrs. Hammond, Nathan found himself in the garden behind the house. The setting sun cast long shadows across the well-tended beds of late-blooming flowers. He heard soft footsteps and turned to see Ning approaching, wearing a simple blue dress that Mrs. Hammond had altered for her. "Mrs. Hammond is a kind woman," she said, coming to stand beside him. "Yes, she is," Nathan agreed. "We're fortunate she was in the store today." Ning looked out over the garden. "She asked me many questions. About China, about my family, about you." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "About me? What did she want to know? If you treat me well. If I afraid of you?" Ning smiled slightly. "I tell her no, not afraid. You good man." "And what did she say to that?" "She say she thinks so too. That she see in your eyes sadness, but not cruelty." Nathan wasn't sure how to respond to that. He'd spent so long keeping people at a distance that having someone see through him was unsettling. "Nathan," Ning said after a moment, her voice serious. "If marshals come, you in trouble because of me. Maybe I should go alone. Find Chinese people in big city." "No," Nathan said immediately, surprising himself with the force of his response. "We stay together. I made a promise to help you, and I intend to keep it." Ning studied his face. "Why this matters so much to you?" Nathan looked away, struggling to articulate feelings he barely understood himself. "When I was a prisoner during the war, there was a guard who treated me like a human being when others didn't. He risked punishment to bring me medicine when I was sick. I never knew his name, never saw him again after I was released, but I swore if I ever had the chance to show the same kindness to someone else, I would." He turned back to Ning. "But it's more than that now. You're not just someone who needs help. You're—" He trailed off, uncertain how to finish the thought. Ning stepped closer, her dark eyes searching his. "I'm what? You're someone I've come to care about," Nathan admitted quietly. "Someone I want to protect, not out of obligation, but because I can't imagine not doing so." Ning's expression softened. She reached out and tentatively placed her hand on his arm. "I care about you too, Nathan Kelley." The moment hung between them, fragile and new. Then, from inside the house, they heard Mrs. Hammond calling them for dinner. Ning smiled. "We go eat now. Tomorrow, we face what comes." What came the next morning was Sheriff Jonathan Hammond, a tall man with his mother's direct gaze and commanding presence. After introductions and a summary of the situation from both Nathan and his mother, the sheriff sat back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. "I know Reed and his type," he said. "Bullies who wrap themselves in righteousness to justify their hatred. Unfortunately, they've put me in a difficult position. If there's a warrant out for your arrest, Mr. Kelley, I'm obligated to detain you until a federal marshal arrives." Nathan nodded grimly. "I understand. However," Hammond continued, "no such warrant has reached me yet, and I'm not inclined to hold you on the word of Frank Miller alone." Mrs. Hammond leaned forward. "What do you suggest, Jonathan?" The sheriff considered for a moment. "I have a friend in the territorial office in Omaha. I'll send a telegraph explaining the situation as I understand it. Meanwhile, I think it would be best if Mr. Kelley and Miss do continue their journey. The longer you stay in one place, the easier you'll be to find." "We were heading to Wyoming," Nathan said. "I have a friend there." Hammond nodded. "A good plan, but I'd suggest avoiding the main roads for a few days. Take the old trading path through the hills. It's longer but less traveled." He rose and went to a desk in the corner, returning with a map which he spread on the table. "Here's your route. My deputy patrols this area weekly, so it's reasonably safe from bandits." They spent the next hour planning their journey, with the sheriff marking safe places to camp and small settlements where they might find supplies without attracting attention. As they prepared to leave, loading their wagon with generous provisions from Mrs. Hammond, the sheriff pulled Nathan aside. "One more thing," he said quietly. "Reed and his friends aren't likely to give up easily. If they find you, they won't bother with the law next time." "I'm aware," Nathan replied. Hammond handed him a small package wrapped in oilcloth. "Extra ammunition for your rifle. And this." He produced a small revolver. "For Miss Du, can she use it?" Nathan hesitated. "I don't know." "Then teach her," the sheriff advised. "A woman traveling these territories should know how to protect herself, especially one who might face additional dangers due to her origin." Nathan accepted the weapons with gratitude. As they said their goodbyes, Mrs. Hammond embraced Ning warmly. Remember what we discussed, my dear, she said. Your worth is not determined by others' perceptions. And Mr. Kelley, she turned to Nathan with a knowing smile, don't wait too long to recognize what's right in front of you. With those cryptic words, she sent them on their way. Following the sheriff's advice, they took the less-traveled path into the hills, their wagon well-stocked and their spirits cautiously optimistic. The next few days passed uneventfully as they made their way through the rolling hills and scattered forests. Nathan taught Ning how to use the revolver, surprised at how quickly she learned. In turn, she shared more of her language with him and told stories of her homeland that made him see it through her eyes, not as a strange, exotic place, but as a home filled with people not so different from those he'd known. On the fourth night of their journey, they made camp in a small clearing beside a stream. The weather had turned cooler, and they sat close together by the fire. Ning had become more comfortable with him, more willing to share her thoughts and ask questions. Tonight, her curiosity turned to his past. You were soldier, she said. In Big War. Nathan nodded, poking at the fire. The Civil War. North against South. You fight for which side? The North. The Union. Ning considered this. For freedom? To free slaves. That's what they tell us now, Nathan said with a hint of bitterness. But when I enlisted, it was to preserve the Union. The freedom part came later. He paused, lost in memories. Though I came to believe in that cause too, especially after what I saw. And you were prisoner? Nathan rarely spoke of this, but with Ning, the words came more easily than he'd expected. Yes, for 8 months near the end of the war. A place called Andersonville. He stared into the flames. Many died there. Disease, starvation. I nearly did too. Ning moved closer, her shoulder touching his. But you survive. I survived, he agreed quietly. Though sometimes I wonder why I did when so many better men didn't. Ning was silent for a moment. Then, in my village, old people say those who survive carry responsibility to live well, to honor those who gone. Nathan looked at her, struck by the simple wisdom in her words. Your old people are wise. She smiled slightly. Sometimes. Other times, they just old. The unexpected humor broke the somber mood, and Nathan found himself laughing. A genuine laugh that felt foreign to his lips, but wonderfully freeing. Ning joined him, her laughter like music in the quiet night. As their mirth subsided, they remained sitting close, the warmth of the fire and each other keeping the night's chill at bay. Nathan became acutely aware of her presence beside him, the subtle scent of her hair, the softness of her shoulder against his, the way the firelight played across her features. Ning, he said softly, when we reach Wyoming, what do you want to do? Truly, she considered the question carefully. I want safe place. Work that is fair. Learn more English. She looked up at him. Maybe, someday have home again. Family. The vulnerability in her eyes made his heart ache. You'll have that, he promised. Whatever happens, I'll make sure of it. And you? She asked. What you want, Nathan? The question caught him off guard. He'd spent so long just surviving, moving from one day to the next, that he'd stopped considering what he truly wanted from life. I suppose, the same things, he said slowly. A home. Purpose. Not to be alone anymore. Ning nodded, her expression thoughtful. Together, maybe we find these things. The word together hung in the air between them, filled with possibility. Nathan felt an unfamiliar hope stirring in his chest, something he'd thought long buried after the war, after Elizabeth, after all the loss. Their moment of connection was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Nathan was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. Get behind the wagon, he instructed Ning, his voice low and urgent. She moved quickly, retrieving the revolver from her pack before taking cover. Nathan crouched beside her, straining to see through the darkness beyond their campfire's glow. The hoofbeats slowed, then stopped. Nathan could make out the shapes of 3 riders at the edge of the clearing. Hello, the camp, a voice called out. Mind if we approach? Nathan remained silent, his finger near the trigger of his rifle. We're not looking for trouble, the voice continued. Just some fellow travelers hoping to share your fire for the night. Something about the voice seemed vaguely familiar to Nathan, though he couldn't place it. He made a quick decision. Approach slowly, he called back. Just one of you first. Keep your hands where I can see them. There was a brief consultation among the riders. Then one dismounted and walked slowly toward the fire, hands held out at his sides. As he entered the circle of light, Nathan recognized him. William Cooper, a trader he'd met a few times in Pine Ridge. "Cooper," Nathan said, still not lowering his rifle. The man squinted, then broke into a relieved smile. "Kelley, Nathan Kelley, is that you? Lord, am I glad to see a familiar face." Nathan stood cautiously. "What are you doing out here, Cooper?" "Heading to Fort Laramie with trade goods," Cooper replied, gesturing toward his companions. "My son and nephew are with me. We're a day behind schedule after losing a wheel yesterday." He peered at Nathan curiously. "Didn't expect to find you out here. Thought you were settled near Pine Ridge." Nathan lowered his rifle slightly, but remained wary. Cooper had never been among Reed's close associates, but that didn't mean he wasn't aware of what had happened. "Plans change," Nathan said noncommittally. "Who else is traveling with you?" "Just us three," Cooper assured him. "Look, we've been riding since dawn, and we're dead tired. If you're worried about something, you can keep your rifle handy, but we'd be mighty grateful for a spot by your fire." Nathan glanced at Ning, who had remained hidden behind the wagon. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "All right, tell your people to come in slowly. No sudden movements." Cooper waved to his companions, who rode forward leading a pack mule. As they entered the firelight, Nathan saw that they were indeed just as Cooper had described. A young man of about 20 who bore a strong resemblance to Cooper, and another slightly older who shared some of his features. "This is my son, James," Cooper introduced, "and my nephew, Thomas. Boys, this is Nathan Kelley, fine carpenter from Pine Ridge." The young men nodded politely as they dismounted and began unpacking their horses. "And who might this be?" Cooper asked, noticing Ning as she cautiously emerged from behind the wagon. Nathan tensed, but kept his voice casual. "This is Ning. She's traveling with me to Wyoming." Cooper's eyebrows rose slightly, but to his credit, he simply tipped his hat. "Ma'am, pleasure to meet you." As the newcomers settled around the fire, sharing their provisions and news of the territories they'd passed through, Nathan remained vigilant, watching for any sign that Cooper knew about the events in Pine Ridge or harbored similar prejudices to Reed and his men. But Cooper seemed genuinely oblivious, chatting about trade prospects at the fort and complaining good-naturedly about the poor condition of the trails. His son and nephew were respectful toward Ning, if a bit curious about her presence. After they had eaten and the conversation began to lag, Cooper pulled out a flask and offered it around. Nathan declined, but Cooper took a long drink before settling back with a sigh. "So, Kelley," he said, his tone casual, "heard there was some excitement in Pine Ridge after I left. Something about a fire at your place?" Nathan stiffened. "News travels fast." Cooper nodded, taking another sip from his flask. "Ran into a fellow from there 2 days back on the trail. Said there was quite the commotion. Reed and some others claiming you'd harbored an Oriental woman against town wishes." He glanced at Ning, then back to Nathan. "Guessing that would be the lady here." The camp fell silent. James and Thomas exchanged uncomfortable looks. Nathan's hand moved closer to his rifle. "That a problem for you, Cooper?" he asked quietly. Cooper seemed to consider the question seriously. "Way I see it, a man's business is his own, so long as he's not harming others." He looked directly at Ning. "Miss, are you with Mr. Kelley by choice?" Ning met his gaze steadily. "Yes. He helped me when others would not." Cooper nodded, apparently satisfied. "Then it's no problem of mine." He took another drink. "Though you should know, Reed's got people looking for you. That fellow I mentioned? He asked if I'd seen you on the trail. Offered money for information." Nathan's jaw tightened. "And what did you tell him?" "Told him I hadn't seen hide nor hair of you," Cooper replied. "Never much cared for Reed or his type. Too quick to tell others how to live." He corked his flask and tucked it away. "But he's not the only one looking. There's talk of marshals being called in. Something about kidnapping charges." "That's a lie," Nathan said, his voice hard. "I didn't kidnap anyone." Cooper raised his hands placatingly. "Didn't figure you for the type. Just thought you should know what's being said." Ning spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. "Nathan saved me. From being sold. Like property." Cooper's eyes widened slightly. "Sold? In Pine Ridge." Nathan briefly explained what had happened at the auction, leaving out some details but making the situation clear. When he finished, Cooper shook his head in disgust. "That's not right. Slavery's been over for years, whatever form it takes." He looked thoughtful. "You know, we're heading to Fort Laramie anyway. If you're wanting to get to Wyoming, you could travel with us. Safer in numbers, and the fort's commander is a reasonable man. Might be able to help straighten out this mess with the marshals. Nathan was surprised by the offer. Why would you help us? Cooper shrugged. Like I said, never cared for Reed's type. Besides, during the war, I had a Chinese fellow working my fields while I was away fighting. Kept my family fed, treated them with respect. Good man. He smiled slightly. And I've always believed in repaying kindness where I found it. Nathan glanced at Ning, who gave a small nod. All right, Nathan decided. We'll travel together to the fort. But at the first sign of trouble, you'll do what you need to, Cooper finished for him. I understand. Now, if you don't mind, I'm about dead on my feet. We can head out at first light. As Cooper and his companions prepared their bedrolls, Nathan moved closer to Ning. What do you think? He asked softly. Can we trust them? Ning studied the traders thoughtfully. Cooper man speak true, I think. I's honest. She placed her hand on Nathan's arm. But keep gun close still. Nathan smiled at her practicality. I will. The next morning, they broke camp early and continued westward together. Traveling with Cooper and his family proved beneficial. They knew the terrain well and had established relationships with the small settlements they passed. At each stop, Cooper introduced Nathan and Ning simply as friends traveling to Wyoming, drawing no attention to Ning's origins or their circumstances. Days passed with increasing comfort between the two groups. James, Cooper's son, was particularly fascinated by Ning's stories of China and eagerly learned the few Cantonese phrases she taught him. Thomas, more reserved but equally respectful, often rode ahead as scout, ensuring their path remained clear. On the 5th day of their joint journey, they crested a hill to see Fort Laramie in the distance, its walls and buildings a welcome sight after the long trek. We'll be there by midday, Cooper announced. Commander Phillips is an old war friend. He'll see us right. Nathan felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The fort represented safety, but also uncertainty. What would happen once they reached civilization again? Would the false charges Reed had filed catch up with them there? As if reading his thoughts, Ning moved her horse alongside his. Not worry, she said quietly. Truth stronger than lies. Nathan wished he shared her confidence. In his experience, the truth often mattered less than who was telling it and who was listening. They approached the fort without incident, the gates opening after Cooper hailed the guards. Inside, the bustle of military and civilian life created a sharp contrast to the quiet of the trail. Soldiers drilled in the yard, traders haggled over goods, and settlers waited for escorts to their land claims further west. Commander Phillips, a graying man with a handlebar mustache and a commanding presence, greeted Cooper warmly before turning curious eyes on Nathan and Ning. William tells me you've had some trouble back east, Phillips said after introductions were made in his office. Something about false accusations? Nathan explained the situation fully, with Cooper occasionally adding his own observations about Reed's character and the general attitude in Pine Ridge. Phillips listened without interruption, his expression giving away nothing. When Nathan finished, the commander leaned back in his chair. It's an unusual situation, to be sure. Legally speaking, Miss Du's status is complicated. The Chinese Exclusion Act hasn't passed Congress yet, but sentiment against Chinese immigration is growing. She didn't choose to come here, Nathan pointed out. She was brought under false pretenses. Phillips nodded thoughtfully, which makes her case even more complex. As for the charges against you, Mr. Kelley, I received a telegraph yesterday from Sheriff Hammond of Fairfield, vouching for your character and explaining the circumstances as he understood them. He also mentioned that the men who burned your property have been bragging about it in Pine Ridge. Then you believe us? Nathan asked, hardly daring to hope. I believe you're not a kidnapper, Phillips confirmed. As for the rest, burning a man's home over a difference of opinion is not how we conduct ourselves in a civilized nation. I'll send word to the territorial authorities clarifying the situation. He turned to Ning. Miss Du, what are your intentions now? Ning glanced at Nathan before answering. I go with Nathan to Wyoming. Find work. Learn more English. Maybe someday, become American. Phillips studied her for a moment. It won't be easy. There's prejudice against the Chinese throughout the territories, though perhaps less so in the more remote settlements where hard workers are valued regardless of origin. I'm not afraid of hard work, Ning said with quiet dignity. Or of people who not understand. The commander smiled slightly. No, I don't imagine you are. He turned back to Nathan. Cooper tells me you're a skilled carpenter. We could use such skills here at the fort. The sutler's store needs expansion, and there are always repairs needed. It would be temporary work, but it would give you time to consider your next steps, and it would place you under military protection until this matter with Pine Ridge is fully resolved. Nathan was surprised by the offer. That's generous, Commander. But what about Ning? The laundress recently left with her husband for California, Phillips replied. Her position remains unfilled. It's not glamorous work, but it pays fairly and includes quarters. Nathan looked at Ning, leaving the decision to her. Her eyes lit up with unexpected excitement. I can work, earn real money. You can, Phillips confirmed. Though I should warn you both, the fort is a small community. People talk. Your arrangement may raise eyebrows. What arrangement? Nathan asked. Phillips' expression was carefully neutral. An unmarried man and woman traveling together, now potentially living in proximity at the fort. It may cause gossip. Nathan hadn't considered how their relationship might appear to others. He'd been so focused on keeping Ning safe that the propriety of their situation hadn't crossed his mind. We could continue to Wyoming as planned, he suggested to Ning. My friend Daniel, I think we stay. Ning interrupted with unexpected firmness. Work here. Safe place. Then decide next step. She looked Phillips directly in the eye. People gossip everywhere. Cannot live afraid of talk. Phillips nodded approvingly. Well said. Miss Dussault, it's settled then? You'll both accept positions here at the fort for the time being? Nathan found himself smiling at Ning's decisiveness. Yes, we accept. Thank you, Commander. Life at Fort Laramie settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal after weeks of uncertainty and travel. Nathan worked on the sutler's store expansion, his skills quickly earning him the respect of the soldiers assigned to assist him. Ning took to her laundress duties with determination, learning from the other women at the fort and improving her English daily. They were assigned separate quarters as propriety demanded, Nathan in the civilian craftsman's barracks, Ning in a small room attached to the laundry. But they took their meals together when possible and spent evenings walking the perimeter of the fort, talking about their days and their growing hopes for the future. As weeks passed, the cloud of Reed's accusations gradually lifted. Commander Phillips received confirmation from territorial authorities that no formal charges would be pursued against Nathan, and a letter arrived from Sheriff Hammond reporting that Reed and his men had been formally questioned about the burning of Nathan's property, though no arrests had been made due to lack of witnesses. With the immediate danger behind them, Nathan found himself contemplating their next steps. The fort offered security, but not permanence. Winter was approaching, and with it, decisions needed to be made. One crisp October evening, Nathan and Ning sat on a bench overlooking the North Platte River, watching the sunset paint the water gold and crimson. Commander Phillips offered to extend my contract through spring, Nathan said. The officers' quarters need renovation, and he's been pleased with the work on the sutler's store. Ning nodded. He tell me same. Say I can stay too, if I want. Do you? Want to stay, I mean. She was quiet for a moment, her gaze on the river. Fort is good place. Safe. But not home. She turned to look at him. What you want, Nathan? It was a question he'd been asking himself for days. The fort had been a haven when they needed it most, but he found himself longing for something more permanent, something that was truly theirs. I've been corresponding with Daniel, my friend in Wyoming, he said. He says there's good land available near his trading post. A small settlement is growing there, mostly homesteaders and a few former soldiers. They need a carpenter, and the trading post needs help. And Chinese woman? They accept. Nathan nodded. Daniel says the settlement is different from Pine Ridge. The people there have come from all over, Germans, Swedes, a few freed slaves from the south. They judge by work ethic, not origin. He paused. He also mentioned that one of the homesteaders is returning east. His cabin would be available, small but sound, with 10 acres cleared for farming. Ning's eyes widened slightly. You want to buy? I've been saving most of my wages, Nathan confirmed. With what Daniel offered for my help at the trading post, we could make an offer on the property. We? Ning repeated softly. Nathan realized the assumption he'd made and felt heat rise in his face. I'm sorry. I shouldn't presume. No, Ning interrupted, a smile spreading across her face. I like we. But. Her expression grew more serious. People talk if we live in same house. Not married. The issue of their relationship had remained largely unspoken during their time at the fort. They had grown closer, certainly. The shared danger and subsequent months of relative peace had created a bond between them that Nathan had never experienced before. But neither had put words to the feelings that had developed. "I've thought about that," Nathan admitted. "There are options. The cabin has 2 rooms. We could maintain separate spaces. Or," he hesitated, then decided to speak plainly, "or we could marry, if that's something you might want. Someday." Ning looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You ask me to marry? Or just speak of possibility?" Nathan took a deep breath. "I'm asking if you could see yourself married to me. Not out of necessity or convenience, but because we've come to care for each other. At least, I've come to care deeply for you." Ning's eyes softened. "I care for you too, Nathan. More than I think possible when we first meet." She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "But marriage is a serious thing. In my culture, forever decision." "It is in mine too," Nathan assured her. "I wouldn't suggest it otherwise." She studied him for a long moment. "In China, parents arrange marriage. Meet husband on wedding day sometimes." A small smile touched her lips. "At least I know you many weeks now." Nathan couldn't help but smile back. "Is that a yes?" "It is yes to possibility," Ning clarified. "Yes to Wyoming. Yes to home together." Her dark eyes held his. "Rest we decide when we get there. See if settlement accept us first." It was a sensible approach, typical of Ning's practical nature. Nathan nodded, understanding her caution. "That's fair. We'll go to Wyoming, establish ourselves, and then see what feels right." Ning smiled and, in an unexpected gesture, reached out to take his hand. Her fingers were small but strong in his grasp. "Thank you, Nathan." "For what?" "For $7, she said with a hint of mischief. "Best money ever spent, I think." Nathan laughed, the sound carrying across the water as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows and promises of tomorrow. The journey to Wyoming territory took place just as winter's first snowfall dusted the plains. Commander Phillips had arranged for them to travel with a military supply convoy heading to outposts further west, ensuring their safe passage. Cooper and his family had departed weeks earlier, but left messages of goodwill and an open invitation to visit their trading post near Cheyenne. Daniel Matthews' settlement came into view on a clear, cold afternoon, a cluster of cabins and small buildings nestled in a valley protected by low hills. Smoke rose from chimneys, and even from a distance, Nathan could see people moving about their business despite the chill. Daniel himself rode out to meet them, a broad-shouldered man with a booming laugh who embraced Nathan like a brother and welcomed Ning with genuine warmth. "You two are the talk of the settlement already," he told them as he led them toward the trading post. "Not often we get a master carpenter and a lady from the Orient joining us in one go. The womenfolk are particularly curious about Miss Du. Good curious or bad curious?" Nathan asked warily, memories of Pine Ridge still fresh. Daniel waved off his concern. "Good curious, I'd say. We've got a Swedish family, the Bergstroms, who settled last spring." Mrs. Bergstrom barely spoke a word of English when they arrived. She's eager to meet someone else navigating a new language and culture. As they approached the settlement, Nathan was struck by how different it felt from Pine Ridge. There was an energy here, a sense of people building something new together rather than clinging to established ways. The buildings were simple but well-constructed, the streets, such as they were, laid out in a logical pattern with room to grow. The cabin Daniel had mentioned sat slightly apart from the others, on a gentle rise overlooking a small creek. It was modest, a main room with a stone fireplace, a smaller bedroom, and a lean-to at the back that could serve as a workshop. The previous owner had left some furniture and basic implements, making it immediately habitable. "It needs work," Daniel acknowledged as they inspected the property. "Roof could use patching before heavy snow comes, and the chimney draws poorly when the wind's from the north. But the bones are good." Nathan ran his hand along the hewn logs, assessing the craftsmanship. "It's sound. We can make it comfortable with some effort." Ning moved through the space with a thoughtful expression, examining the small kitchen area and the iron stove. "Good house," she pronounced finally. "Can be home." They completed the purchase that same day, using Nathan's savings and signing an agreement for him to work 3 days a week at the trading post to cover the remainder. Ning, too, found opportunity, Mrs. Bergstrom and several other women in the settlement needed help with sewing and mending, skills Ning had mastered in China. The settlement welcomed them with a communal dinner their first night, each family bringing dishes to share. Nathan watched with pride as Ning conversed with the other women, her English improving daily and her natural warmth transcending any language barriers. There were curious glances and questions about their relationship, which Nathan answered simply. They were building a life together, the details of which were still unfolding. As winter deepened, they settled into their new home and roles in the community. Nathan repaired the cabin and built additional furniture, while Ning transformed the interior with simple touches. Curtains made from fabric traded at the post, arrangements of dried wildflowers and grasses, cushions stuffed with clean straw. They maintained separate sleeping arrangements as propriety demanded, but they lived and worked as partners in all other ways. Their relationship evolved naturally in the quiet moments. Conversations by the fire after dinner, shared laughter over Ning's attempts to teach Nathan to use chopsticks, comfortable silences as they worked side by side. Nathan found himself noticing small things. The way Ning hummed Chinese melodies as she worked, how she placed her hand on his arm when emphasizing a point, the quiet strength she displayed when facing new challenges. Christmas approached, bringing with it the settlement's preparations for celebration. The small church, which doubled as a schoolhouse, was decorated with pine boughs and candles. Families exchanged simple gifts and shared special foods from their various traditions. On Christmas Eve, after returning from the community service, Nathan presented Ning with a small wooden box he had carved for her, intricate patterns of intertwined vines and flowers adorning its surface. "It's beautiful," she breathed, tracing the designs with her fingertips. "You make this?" Nathan nodded, pleased by her reaction. "Open it." Inside, nestled on a bed of soft cloth, lay a silver comb for her hair, simple but elegant. "Nathan," she said softly, lifting it carefully. "Too much. Silver expensive." "Not too much for you," he replied. "Besides, I traded carpentry work for it. Didn't spend a penny." Ning smiled and reached behind the stove, retrieving a package wrapped in brown paper. "I have a gift for you too." Nathan unwrapped it to find a wool scarf, finely knitted in a deep blue that matched his eyes. "You made this?" She nodded. "Mrs. Bergstrom teach me knitting. Take many tries to get right." Nathan ran the soft wool between his fingers, touched by the hours of work the gift represented. "It's perfect. Thank you." They sat together by the fire, the cabin warm and snug against the winter night outside. The moment felt right for the question that had been on Nathan's mind for weeks. "Ning," he began, setting aside the scarf. "We've been here almost 2 months now. The settlement has accepted us. We have work, a home." He took her hand gently. "I was wondering if you've given any more thought to what we discussed at Fort Laramie. About our future." Ning looked down at their joined hands, then up to meet his gaze. "I think of it often," she admitted. "Think of you often." "And?" Nathan prompted softly. "In my country, marriage is not just two people. It's families joining. But my family far away, maybe never see again." A sadness flickered across her face. "Here, I have no one but you." "That's not quite true," Nathan countered. "Look at how Mrs. Bergstrom has taken you under her wing. How Daniel treats us both like family. We're building connections here." Ning considered this. "Yes, new family, maybe." She squeezed his hand. "I would marry you, Nathan Kelley. Not because need protection or home, but because—" She placed her free hand over her heart. "Because here, I feel something I never feel before. Peace, belonging, love." The word love hung in the air between them, simple and profound. "I love you too," Nathan said, the words coming easily now that she had opened the door to them. "I think I have since that day by the creek, when you chose to stay with me rather than run." Ning smiled, her eyes bright with emotion. "Brave decision. Best decision." Nathan leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, she met him halfway, their lips touching in a first kiss that was gentle and warm and full of promise. They were married 2 weeks later in the settlement's small church, with Daniel serving as Nathan's best man and Mrs. Bergstrom standing with Ning. The entire community attended, bringing food and good wishes for the couple who had already become integral to their shared life. Reverend Thompson, who traveled a circuit of frontier settlements, performed the ceremony with respectful nods to both their traditions. Ning wore a blue dress that the settlement women had helped her make, with red embroidery that she explained was traditional for Chinese brides. Nathan wore his best shirt and a new waistcoat. The blue scarf Ning had made him tucked carefully inside his coat. As winter gave way to spring, Nathan and Ning Kelley's cabin became known throughout the settlement as a place of warmth and welcome. Nathan's carpentry skills were in constant demand as the community grew, while Ning's garden, planted with both familiar American vegetables and seeds she'd carefully preserved from China, became a source of pride and curiosity. Word of the settlement's success spread, bringing new families and opportunities. Among the newcomers that summer was a young Chinese man named Lin, who had escaped the railroad camps and was seeking a place where he might be treated as a man rather than cheap labor. Nathan and Ning welcomed him, helping him establish himself as a baker after discovering his skill with bread and pastries. Others followed, a Mexican family skilled in leatherworking, an elderly black man who had been a teacher before the war, a young widow from Ireland with 3 small children. The settlement grew not into a mirror of the towns they had left behind, but into something new, a community defined not by where its people had come from, but by what they were building together. One warm evening in late summer, Nathan sat on the porch he had added to their cabin, watching Ning tend to her garden. She moved with purpose among the plants, her hands gentle as she harvested beans and checked the ripening tomatoes. Her English had become nearly fluent, though she still taught Nathan phrases in Cantonese, insisting that their children, when they came, would know both languages. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up and smiled, the same smile that had first captured his heart that day by the creek. She gathered her harvest in her apron and walked toward him, her steps light despite the day's work. "Dinner will be good tonight," she announced, showing him the vegetables. "The corn is ready too. Will you help pick it?" Nathan nodded, rising to join her. As they walked together toward the cornfield they had planted in spring, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from an auction block in Pine Ridge to this land that was truly theirs, this life they had built together. "What are you thinking?" Ning asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Nathan smiled, taking her free hand in his. "I was thinking about value," he said. "About how some things cost very little but are worth everything." Ning's eyes twinkled with understanding. "Like $7? "Exactly like $7, he agreed. "Best investment I ever made." She laughed, the sound carrying across their land. A sound of joy, of freedom, of a love that had defied prejudice and fear to find its own path. Together, they walked into the golden cornfield, toward the future they continued to build, one day at a time.